welcome to Amtgard Leadership University. This is our second panel from No More War. And this one's going to be all about interkingdom partnering and communication. The intent being exactly how do we nurture that kind of relationship both in the kingdom and then across multiple kingdoms, and then definitely get into partnerships so that we've got teams working together for success as opposed to individuals just trying to pull things together. What I'd ask each of our panel members to do is just do me a quick favor. Is starting from my left to my right, going to ask you just to introduce yourself and give us a little bit of the concept as far as what do you want to make sure that we hit on during the conversation, and then we'll take it from there. So, Quorpeck?
I am Quorpeck, current Emperor of Iron Mountains, and really the ability to push the communication to make sure that all kingdoms involved are available and in complete understanding of what they're doing.
Okay. I apologize. Do me a favor. We need to speak loud enough all the way for her to hear in the back. So get nice and loud. We got a good microphone there, but it works best whenever we're all nice, loud, and proud. Ormar?
Ormar Svensson, current Emperor of the Iron Mountain. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm trying to take over the known world.
That's bold.
Current Emperor of Rivermoor. So the interkingdom communication and partnership thing, some of the big points I want to kind of cover over is communication and your ability to be able to find those who are in charge and direct with them. Because at this point, with us being at the kingdom level, it's no longer about the individual. It's now about the entire groups and their ability to be diverse with other entire groups. So communication is one big point that I definitely want to hit on pretty hard, and then understanding your surroundings as far as an entire society rather than just individuals.
Okay. Razor?
Razor, Knight of the Flame, former King of Tal Dagore. I'd say that probably one of the things that I find most useful in this situation is actually knowing the people you're trying to work with. If you don't know where you're going with them or know where they are or how they run things themselves, you're going to run up against a lot of brick walls, and I think that's probably one of the biggest things to hit.
Okay. Ormar, what are some examples? Let's get context. Mm-hmm. What are some examples when we start talking about intra-kingdom partnering?
All right, so actually a really great example would be this event itself. Known World War, the entire intent behind it originally was it was an idea called Battle of the Moors. And Battle of the Moors was Rivermoor and a principality to the south of us, the Confederacy of Dreadmoor. We're going to have a war event that was to... it was supposed to pretty much introduce Dreadmoor as a principality wanting to become a kingdom to the rest of the kingdoms. And Rivermoor, having being a recent and new kingdom, everybody kind of already knew who we were. So we were going to foster their relationship with the rest of Amtgard as a whole. So the idea was that event was supposed to be kind of like, hey, look, here are two different groups working together to make this bigger event. Now, shortly after we started planning for the event, Dreadmoor was dissolved and brought back into the fold with the Kingdom of Emerald Hills. However, we still liked the idea of what we were working with because already we'd built new relationships with Emerald Hills as a whole because a lot of their leadership pool came from their confederacy as well. So we continued to push forward with the idea of, hey, this is a really good idea. We have two kingdoms already with the entire autocrat team being split between the two. So this is not just one autocrat team from Rivermoor, and that's it. This is an entire team from two different kingdoms working together to make one goal, this event. So that's a solid example right there. Another example would be like Keep on the Borderlands, I know is starting to become a fairly large interkingdom event. And then things like Amtgard Food Fight. That right there is it's across all of Amtgard. It's multiple kingdoms participating in this with multiple people from different groups organizing, coordinating with one another to kind of accomplish one goal. So those are three pretty solid examples I feel right there.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So Quorpeck, those are some pretty recent examples, right? So do you think that's the future trend, or are we going to start seeing more interkingdom cooperation and
Hopefully. I mean, all of us take the position of monarch or emperor to kind of benefit the club in general. So I think fostering the inter-kingdom events is really where we should be turning. Because, when you go to a new event, you're like, I need to kind of figure out how everyone in that event plays, but we're all supposed to be following the same rule set. So if we do more inter-kingdom events, I think it'll kind of blend how we're all doing Amtgard in the same image.
Razor, you've been really involved with Keep, which is one of the examples that Ormar used. I think it's fair to say you'd likely foot stomp both of their points. What are some of your lessons learned in crossing the kingdom boundaries and trying to work together?
The biggest thing I notice as a hurdle is trying to keep what your group loves about events while trying to hybridize it with what another group loves about events. The big thing with Keep is Rising Winds is a hugely competitive kingdom. Most of their events over the last couple of years have been themed heavily in team on team, and they break down to the company level. So I mean, that competition runs deep there. In Tal Dagore, we're not so much themed that same sort of way. We don't run that way. So it's trying to keep that balance of what's you and what's them without losing either one, so that you keep your base.
Ormar, any tips for that? Because, I mean, when you got cultures clashing, how do you smooth that out for the greater game?
So a lot of, and this has kind of already happened even during this event too, is whoever's kind of running the events or running those battle games is setting up those battle games to be fluid and to be able to be adjustable. So don't have it to where whatever events you have planned for something are like set in stone, like this is exactly how it will happen, because things change, things are fluid. This is a changing game as we go. Just because it was a good idea on paper doesn't exactly mean that it's received well. So you have to be able to on the fly go, you know what, let's make a small adjustment that makes it more fun. Right now people aren't having fun, so let's adjust it so that way they are. And talk to the people. Generally they know exactly what they don't like about something, and they'll let you know when you ask them directly. So yeah, being fluid with whatever you have planned to kind of adjust on the fly to make sure it works for them. I know at Keep back a couple of years ago, they had an event that was kind of running a little bit to where people were frustrated with the timing on it, and they adjusted for it, and they made to where people could run through it faster, and that fixed the problem. On the fly, they made that change. They adjusted it for the people that were present, and it worked out for them. So it wasn't what they originally planned, but they made adjustments to work it out.
Okay. Quorpeck, you want to elaborate on that at all?
Really, at this point, for me, it's very much about the ability to adjust and adapt depending on the people you're in. So, I mean, yeah, if your people aren't happy, you need to change, you need to adjust it. If they're happy, keep it going the way it is.
Okay. Razor, here's a question for you. Say I'm not the monarch. I mean, it can be easy maybe to reach across the kingdom boundaries whenever there's monarch, but maybe I got this great idea. How can I get that great idea to the multi-kingdom level?
Find out who the movers and shakers are where you're targeting. Use them. I mean, you're not going to be received somewhere where not everybody knows you. That's why you make allies, you make friends. I don't know a whole lot of people in Rivermoor. I know this guy. I got a good idea that would help Rivermoor. Throw it to him. I'd let him run with it. The source of the idea and who gets the credit for it shouldn't matter. Overall, the goal should be to make everything better for everybody.
Okay. So reaching out, Facebook, or just obviously at an event and trying to build that
network. I personally find it easier face-to-face, but I mean, whatever works for you. There's no limitations.
Okay. Ormar, do you want to elaborate to that at all, or?
Yeah, so we're talking about like whenever you're trying to reach out to a certain group and it's cross borders. For the reigns leading up to this, obviously I wasn't in the king position or emperor position, whichever we wish to call it. It was more a matter of getting behind the scenes and coordinating with these people. So participation, obviously, in the inter-kingdom level has helped myself out a lot. I've met a lot of people at these inter-kingdom events. This is part of how you network, how you get to know people, how you get to understand the kind of people that want to play your game. So whenever you're planning for those events and you're not exactly the one in power, but you're still the person doing the talking, it helps that you've established these connections. Over Facebook, that's extremely effective. Over the phone, whether it's on Skype, those are effective means too. And sometimes just traveling out and doing the face-to-face conversations. Another thing that really helps too, and this is something we've been starting to do a lot more recently, Rivermoor, for example, has a chat room on Facebook that has a solid number of the members of the kingdom in it. So for the most part, anytime we ever have a discussion about what's going on with, certain things within the kingdom or outside of the kingdom, having that discussion there, a lot of people see it. There's a lot of visibility with it. So continuing that communication and putting it out there where a lot of people can see it kind of perpetuates that, well, this is a good idea that we heard from Tal Dagore. Well, now it's not just me that heard this good idea. I've now shared this with 40, 50 people inside our kingdom. So visibility with your communication is another thing too. So transparency as a whole. So just because you're the guy with all the ideas doesn't mean that you need to keep it to yourself. Let everybody else see those ideas too. You might have the guy right next to you understand a means to effectively, start that task, whatever it may be, or talk about it or perpetuate it, or even have a better idea on how to do it. Keeping it to yourself and only talking between like just me and him doesn't exactly get that information out there. So there might be better ways to do it that we've not considered yet. So transparency and visibility with communication is probably, online, effective as hell.
Okay. What I'd like to do now is, so we talked a little bit now about interkingdom, multiple kingdoms, and things like that. I want to narrow down to even internal within the kingdom. I know that seems to be a challenge, especially when we start talking about land and land as opposed to kingdom and kingdom working together. Obviously, Iron Mountains has a lot to bring to that table, one of the elder kingdoms. How can I nurture, as a monarch of a kingdom level, how can I nurture that interkingdom or intra-kingdom relationship with my lands so they have a sense of a kingdom identity?
Really, it is all about the communication, making sure that it's constant, it's transparent, so that way there's no, well, I kind of talked about this, but it didn't lead it out straightforward. Basically, you bear it all, and that aids with our communications. If you need to talk to somebody, you just do it. Don't be afraid of doing it. Don't be skeptical about the response. The worst thing you can possibly do is not reach out. Even other parks, to other kingdoms. You have to take that one step forward before any of it can actually be fostered into a true partnership or communication.
Okay. As the baby kingdom with Rivermoor, obviously there's always a lot of momentum and the kingdom identity whenever a group of lands are trying to pursue kingdom status. Two questions for you. But the first one, has that started to fall off for Rivermoor now that you've attained that, if you will?
I would say no. Our identity right now is very strong, and part of that identity is how we organize the identity itself. So when we decided that we wanted to be a kingdom and we were done with being a principality, we'd already been autonomously running ourselves for a while under the Iron Mountains. That was how they fostered our relationship, is that we would self-govern and do our own thing. So we already knew how to run our own area. That was already understood. That wasn't a new game for us to figure out when we decided, you know what, we're going to do this kingdom push. The thing we did not have was the identity. So we started getting people excited about it, talking about it, saying, hey, wear that blue and white. Continue to wear that blue and white. This is part of who you are. This is your region. This is your reign. This is your kingdom. People got excited about it, and they came back. All of our ANS competitions for a while there were nothing but wear the blue and white. All of our battle games were focused around, the blue and white winning type thing. So a lot of people got excited about wearing that. The identity was formed, and then moving up to us becoming a kingdom, like a lot of people really fostered that. We're a kingdom now. Since becoming a kingdom, we've kept that same energy level right on par. So we've always had that identity, and it continues to perpetuate. Now, this upcoming reign that we've had going on, our pushes have been more focused on we are a kingdom, and now not only are we a kingdom, but we want to show the rest of Amtgard that we're a kingdom that means business. So now we're getting everybody excited about show your pride, show the rest of Amtgard exactly who we are. Not only were we a principality becoming a kingdom, but now we're a kingdom that says this is how we think Amtgard should be played, and we want everybody else to see it and enjoy it, and it to become a part of the inter-kingdom culture as a whole. So I feel that our identity as a whole has continued to perpetuate after becoming a kingdom as well.
So Razor, how do I avoid that from overshadowing my individual land if I'm a local park monarch, to where everybody's so focused on the kingdom, and maybe even traveling and things like that? If you did kingdom days, I can't recall for Rivermoor, but you got to keep the home fires burning. How do I do that?
You're absolutely right. That's one of probably the hardest things to balance for a park that's in a roving crown. And a roving crown situation as a whole is, how do you keep enough people at home to keep your park running and yet still participate in the rest of the kingdom? I don't think there's any one universal answer to that. It really has to be you got to know your group and feel it out on your group. But, I mean, like all things, moderation is the key. So you've got to have your players that are willing to go, I really want to go there, but somebody's got to stay back and watch, keep the park going. And that's really where you have the troubles, because that person's kind of hard to find. They probably provide more of a service than anybody actually knows. Because with our game, if you're not recruiting, you're dying. Because our turnover rate of players is just astronomical. So that service of staying at home and keeping the park running is almost unmeasurable.
Quorpeck, let's go a little bit more targeted on officers and leadership. How do I maintain a good leadership pool at the park level if, as most kingdoms are now, roaming crowns, people are flocking to run for the kingdom level offices for whatever reason? How do I keep both those pools viable?
In my opinion, still, is no matter what the size of the kingdom or how long it's been in effect, the individual parks are actually what makes the kingdom. So if I'm thinking about stepping up for imperial level, but there's enough other people running or something like that, if the park is not covered, we as a kingdom cannot function appropriately. So you step back and you take part. You focus on your individual parks. The kingdom will take care of itself. There's always those of us that are willing to step up and take the bigger seat. So once the park's covered, we can do that.
Okay. Ormar, you talked about maintaining the momentum. Mm-hmm. And Quorpeck mentioned communication. I think, well, obviously, if leadership and communication aren't in the same conversation, you're screwing something up, right? We can agree to that. Yeah, so how do I maintain that inter-park communication is where it's productive?
So we're like the overall theme of what we're talking about right now is, keeping together the intra-kingdom relations, everything like that. I feel it's important to remember that while you're in the monarch seat as a whole, your duty is the monarchy for that entire level. So you're the kingdom level. So understanding that the park level, the individual businesses, each of the parks is not your concern. That's more the concern of the individual officers there. That's their priority, and keeping them focused on that too. So those officers that are like in charge of this barony or in charge of this shire or in charge of this duchy, your job as the monarch is to communicate with them on what their needs are for those particular groups, but not to actually work with them individually on each park level. Your job is to make sure that they've got what they need to function and they've got the attention that they need. So if one of them's falling behind on recruiting, what can we do more as a kingdom as a whole to back them up, to give them the recruiting numbers that they need? But overall, to let them individually run their shows and not to run it for them. So to back that up, like regarding like overshadowing, is making sure that you're still being out there with your communication and being visible with your communication. Still letting everybody in the kingdom know where we're at with those individual smaller tasks. Hey, this park right here needs assistance with our stuff. I know that we're focused right now on this war event or getting ourselves out there, but at the same time, these small parks are still a part of who we are. So as long as you keep consideration for it when you're doing all those other things and keeping that information out there, so you're keeping the consideration in other people's minds, that's going to help you out a lot too. So having information flowing helps a lot.
Quorpeck, we talked a little bit about the Rivermoor having a chat room and things like that. What are some tips that you've used to maintain that level of communication with your park officers?
We basically do the same thing. We open up Facebook being the current way of communication. You open up a group with the imperial officers versus all the park officers. Keep them involved with everything. So as they begin to take office, they can set their schedule as to not overlap the imperial things, but still as emperors or monarchs. We try to be there for their major points in each park, i.e. like mid-reign or end-reign. Because parks, when they're a fair distance away from your center, they start feeling forgotten or whatnot. So as the kingdom monarchs, we try and step into their parks during their major events, just so they constantly reminded that, hey, we're here, we're supporting you.
Okay. Razor, have you ever taken a deliberate communication plan when you've been in office or working with Keep? By deliberate, I mean monthly meetings, things like that?
Semi. When I ran Keep last year, we had meetings set up about once a month. just to get everything moving. And then as Keep got progressing farther and farther, those meetings would become farther and farther apart until we didn't need them for a while. And then, because I mean, it's all about picking people that will help you succeed. Nobody runs a good event or runs a good kingdom by themselves. It's all about the people that help you build that momentum, and trusting them. So we'd have a lot of meetings in the beginning, space that out into big gaps with nothing, and then start having more meetings again at the end when you get towards that home run stretch of, okay, guys, we're coming on. What do you need? What do you need? What can I do for you? Not come in and try to be possessive or take over or whatnot, but try to give them as many tools as you can so that they succeed.
Ormar, how do I find those volunteers?
That's actually probably the hardest one. So when you're in that role, delegation obviously is extremely important. You don't want to just sit there and say, you do this, you do this, you do this. Sometimes you need to be directive, and that's okay, but you have to understand who your people are in the first place. One thing about Amtgard that's kind of frustrating is this is a completely volunteer organization. We don't get to pick who we play with. So we don't get to pick if the new guy that just decided to start playing also happens to be really good at, getting his voice loud and getting out there, or just being charismatic as a whole. We don't get that option. So you have to interact with people and kind of find out who has an interest in it in the first place. Because ultimately, this is all volunteer. So the only people that really are going to do any of these things are the people who want to do it. So yeah, finding those people is difficult, but it's also understanding who your people are and who wants to do it. So a point that I like to make is ask, who wants to do it? Is this an interest that you have? More than anything, I think with delegation is don't set somebody to do a task that they have no interest in doing, because that'll tear it apart more than anything.
Okay. Quorpeck, does Iron Mountains ever have, or have you ever taken an approach of like a succession plan? The new officers coming in, you've only got 6 months in the seat. Or is that their problem to solve?
Really, I mean, as those of us that have been in the game for a little bit, it's in most instances you have something to fall back onto. So I generally sit with between 7 and 11 quals, pretty much on standby. Because in my opinion, the worst thing is for the kingdom to not have the leadership. So, I mean, if I have to sacrifice another 6 months or a year or whatever to make sure that we continue as a kingdom, then that's what I do. If somebody steps up, then cool. That's saved for another time.
Okay. Razor, what about an event like Keep? Multiple kingdoms, things like that. What kind of succession plan is there for who's going to replace you whenever you're done?
Keep is actually set up pretty soundly, and we have Michael to thank for that. Keep is set up with an independent board that does the primary event staff choosing, and that's chosen off of bids that are submitted to them. And it's made up of the 2 previous monarchs from either kingdom. Well, I'm sorry, the current and the previous monarchs from either kingdom. And then 1 member at large for 5 people. It's the rule of thumb is the 5th person is Mikey right now. But they then choose who's going to run it the next year. And that's chosen at Keep. So when you show up at Keep on day 1, I like to say that you start planning Keep on the first day of the previous Keep. Because that's when you have to come with your plan. And that's when they're going to pick whose bid looks good and whose bid they're going to go with. And from there, it's take off running, get to a nice pace, and then just ride it.
Okay. So since this is relatively new and fresh in everybody's mind, let's talk about No More War. You talked about where it started, the Battle of the Moors.
Yep.
Quickly, just hitting the key obstacles, the key hurdles. You guys had the conversation, decided you're going to move forward on it.
Yep.
Okay. How did we get from great idea to now we're day 2 of the event?
All right. So after we determined that, Battle of the Moors probably wasn't going to be something, we decided we still wanted to do the event. We felt it was a good idea. We also felt that it existed in a part of Amtgard where there was almost kind of a void of events. This Midwest region right here, we have Keep on the Borderlands. That's a little bit further out to the east, but not so much towards the west. We felt that it was a pretty solid location, centralized between multiple kingdoms, which are fairly active in Amtgard right now and have fairly large populaces. we felt it was still going to be an effective event and we moved forward. So we kept our game plan. We changed the name of it, but all the staff positions stayed the same. We brought on a couple more people. I think this is when we actually reached out to you, Roy, and started including Tal Dagore in more of the planning and including Iron Mountains in more of the planning. And we just kept moving forward. We had some obstacles with running with state sites versus the standard private sites that a lot of other events have run with. And having Roy on board too, having run with Keep, was instrumental in assisting and finding people to help us get certain obstacles, overcome. For example, we had insurance that we had to get a hold of, and that was something we weren't quite familiar with yet. We weren't sure if our, liability waivers were going to be enough. They were not. We needed liability insurance for the event as well. So we coordinated with one of the Sol Invictus guys to make sure that we had good insurance. Eventually, one of our guys in our kingdom handled that down for us. Past that, we still had to come before a board for getting this site with the local mundane Clay County parks. So we had to make sure that we were on board with them. So we just kept moving forward with our plan. The same people stuck with the same plan that they originally had, so nothing changed there. We just changed names, change of flag, kept moving forward. Otherwise, there haven't been terribly many obstacles. Everybody's been very, very excited about the event and wanting to move forward with it. So getting to the succession plan, what do we want to do to continue it going, to keep it going? Right now, Known World War, the intent behind it is we want it to be completely separate, not owned by any kingdom. However, we still want to keep it centralized in this location. So using the profits from this particular event, the first one, we're going to form a nonprofit organization separate of the other kingdoms. So it's its own event that partners with the kingdoms. And those of us who are on the original planning team are going to sit on the board of directors, and we're going to serve as those who select which bid will be seen in the future. So right now we're already having discussions on next year's event as to who's going to be running it. A lot of the same team is probably going to be on board to kind of keep some of that fluidity. And we're going to be adding a lot more people. As it turns out, this event has worked out really well for us so far. So we know that we need to expand already. So we're going to have our minds open to new ideas and adding more people into the seat. But overall, that BOD will be selecting future bids. So that's our succession plan with it, is to keep it going, keep it solidified with the previous events and grow from there.
Okay. Iron Mountains. How did you know when Rivermoor was ready to manage itself? Or did you just be like, stay out of trouble and you just prayed a lot?
Well, I wasn't in office when that happened, but my wife, however, was. And when she got the bid for it, she was very impressed with how much work that all of the people had done involved, and how much they'd basically been in everybody's eyes or ears, asking questions and figuring out what it took to be there. So she was a huge supporter for it because of the amount of work they had put into it.
So pretty much they matured first. Is that a fair statement? And then
yeah,
they became more hands off as opposed to letting them just sort it out. Okay. Is there any horror stories about trying to communicate across lands?
Yeah. I'll not name names.
Sure.
But I have worked with some people on events that were just, I'm hard-headed. I have no problem admitting that. But I've worked with some people that make me want to bang my head against a wall. And if you know me, you understand that patience is not a virtue which I am in large supply of. But it's really the only way to get through it, is just grit your teeth and bear it. This too shall pass. You just got to understand that it's for a better purpose. And all those issues you run into, you're producing something that's worth it, is what you got to keep in your mind.
Okay. So how do I work to fix that relationship, Ormar? If communication's an issue, how do I get it positive again?
This falls back onto understanding communication, and this is more of of kind of being open with who you are playing with, remembering and understanding that we don't get to pick who plays the game, we don't get to pick who's in office in other kingdoms. So sometimes you just have to deal with who you have present. We all play Amtgard overall to scratch an itch. We all have the same itch, and we all like doing this. This is something that is a part of our lives. Understanding and relating the fact that that person over there, while frustrating, is doing the same thing you're doing. They're trying to play this game to have fun. I think helps with kind of taking a step back and accepting who they are as a whole too. So if you're accepting and you're patient, you mentioned patience. Patience and acceptance is big parts of that communication with dealing with somebody that, you may not exactly like how they function, how they do what they do, but understanding that they're trying to accomplish the same goal that you are might help you just get over some of that the empathy you may not be able to breach with them. So being understanding, being communicative, and just being accepting of who they are helps a lot. And then just talking to them, being straightforward. Don't beat around the bush with what you need or what you want. Just be like, hey, here's our goal. What do you think we need to do to get this done? Just be straightforward. A lot of people just really appreciate there being a lack of any sort of shade or any sort of deceptive communication. So just be straightforward, communicative, open, accepting.
Okay. Anybody have any examples where multiple parks have cooperated on something that wasn't quite kingdom level they want to share?
Okay, yeah. I'm going to throw the current regent of Rising Winds under the bus on this one. I started playing in Ohio. And Ohio's got a long history of trying to get its stuff together, and then egos get involved, and it all falls apart. Rinse, repeat every couple of years. Currently, they're going through one of those, and I applaud him on what he's trying to do. And what he's actually doing is he's setting up it's essentially a circuit of traveling around to all the parks in the state. It's like a poker run where you get a stamp at each location, and at the end, they're giving away prizes that promote Ohio Amtgard to the players that, you get something for going to 3 places or 4 places or 5 places, or if you do the whole circuit, you get something really big and cool. Things like that, just your region, huge. That's especially with a kingdom the size of the Rising Winds, which, what is it, like 11 states they're in, something crazy like that?
It's ridiculous.
It's huge. It's geographically ridiculous. They have to do something like that. Otherwise, people will get just lost in the size of the environment.
Anybody else got an example?
Actually, we do right now. So one of our baronies right now is actually, they're falling behind in their numbers, and here coming in about 2 months, if they don't reach the numbers that they need to, they're going to be looked at being put on probation in our kingdom. So some of the groups from Quorpeck, one of our primary duchies, has put together a team of people to kind of work up with them as a sort of like consultants. Like, hey, this is how we've run demos in the past that worked very effectively for us. Hey, let's take a look at your parks that you're in right now. Are these effective parks? Do these have visibility? What can you do to increase that visibility? Are there more effective parks out in that location that you haven't tried in a while? And reaching out to just their general community, giving them examples on what they've done that's also worked. So that those team of folks from Quorpeck moving up to Gehenna Plains has helped out, at least, if anything, boost up the excitement in Gehenna Plains. So now those guys are now focused on, no, we need to improve these things. So Quorpeck coming up and working with them to kind of give them assistance has improved that relationship right there. It's not multiple parks involved with it, but it is 2 parks helping each other out. And I think that falls right into that partnership example we were talking about.
No, I agree. So I'm going to focus on the negative stuff just for a little bit here, because I want to try and help those who need to work through it. What are some warning signs whenever we're starting to have some park versus park or even internal park drama? What's some stuff to be looking for in advance? Because we know whenever it starts to crumble, what's some warning signs out there?
The park I play in, Darkman, we have primarily 2 fighting companies that are about average in their attendance. And for Angry Sky and the Black Hearts, it's really not a problem. But when a new person looks at that, they see the constant banter between us as an angry rivalry, when in fact that we're just joking with each other. And so, for us, it's the understanding of, hey, for the new people and whatnot, it may sound harsh, but in the end of the day, hey, we're all still friends. We'll go out and hang out afterwards. And bringing the communication to all people in that is really helped our park continue to accelerate for that issue.
Ormar, how about you? Any tips for knowing those warning signs?
Yes. So there's always going to be the bantering. He discussed a little bit. I mean, we have that. There's a lot of clash of personalities that takes place across the game. Even in local groups, there's clashes of personalities. Each individual is different. Each group, when they form a fighting company or a household, they have a likeness of some sort of personality trait, or just overall how they culturally interact with one another. So as you get the larger groups, you'll see those things. Those interactions are at every single park. Ways to recognize when it starts getting bad is that communication. It's when suddenly it went from there's nice bantering, friendly bantering, to now it's angry bantering, or more troubling is the silence. When the communication stops, that's a clear indication of a problem. When it's this group of people over here that normally bantered with those guys over there, just stopped associating entirely. And they stop coming out as often, or they do come out, but they just stop talking entirely. Because all those bridges of communication, which we've established is essential to actually running any organization, have just stopped. So when those bridges are down, that's when it's about to start sinking. So if you recognize when that communication starts to fall, that's the time to kind of, what can we do? Start trying to rebridge that communication, say, okay, pause, what's going on? Because not always will you be able to identify what the problem itself is, but at least you can see the effect of it, and it's that silence.
Razor, when we start talking about kingdom responsibilities and park level leadership responsibilities and really membership, you often hear some complaints about at the subordinate parks that, the kingdom's not involved, not engaged enough. Kingdom, likewise, nobody's submitting for awards and things like that. We know that communication is important. Whose job is it?
Everybody's. It's a two-way street. I mean, if I can talk to you all day long, but it's not communication. You can talk to me all day long. It's not communication unless you have the back and forth. You're just talking at somebody. And I don't think there's any easier way. It's a give and take relationship. It has to be, otherwise it's one-sided, and one-sided leads to exactly what you described there. That either feeling like you're being talked down to, or like you're talking to the wall.
Anybody else have anything to add to that? Okay, so let's talk a little bit more. We got some questions in from the team here. How do you know whenever your idea, how did you know when No More War was ready for all of Amtgard, and it wasn't just a good idea that you guys had over a beer? Ormar?
That's a hard one to find. Like to actually determine when it's a good idea, when it's not a good idea, because ultimately it's not really your decision at all. It's everybody else's decision who wants to play a part in it. When we started talking about it, part of what kind of gave indications, at least for myself and our team put together, was the excitement about it. Hearing people chatter about it and say, well, we're really excited about this event coming up. So we talked about that forum that we're in, everybody in that forum being excited about it. Now, that's 40 plus people excited about it. They're in turn talking to people that are not in that forum saying, we're excited about it too. When we talk to the groups down south, everywhere we're going, everyone's talking about how they're excited about that thing. I think those are clear indicators that it's probably a good idea at that point, but those aren't always just because everybody says it's a good idea, what's going to follow through with it. They help. Knowing that it's a conversation that people are having helps you identify that maybe it is a good idea, because if people are having the conversation, it's something that they're considering and they have an interest in. So that's part of, again, feeding back into communication as a whole. When people are considering these things, they keep it in mind, and it kind of plays a role into communication or whatever conversation topic it is. So with this event, a lot of people were talking about it. A lot of people were excited about it. So we felt that it was going to be successful.
Okay. Quorpeck? Should every event try to be multi-kingdom and inter-kingdom extravaganza?
Whether it being the goal of all of us combining together to create an event, I do want to say what your kingdom can support. If the current monarch doesn't have the availability to have the communication with the people, then he or she can do what she's capable of, or he's capable of doing. Other than that, man, go as big as you can, but don't stretch yourself too thin. Only deal with what you can handle.
Okay. Razor, your body mechanics showed you had something to say. What you got?
So I think it's a very geographical-based question because, like where Tal Dagore is located at, we've got Rising Winds on one side and Rivermoor on the other side. We can pair up with either one of those two to do an event and do a big event, and that's two different influxes of ideas we'll have. Where the IM's located at, whole different ball game geographically. They've got Dragonspine's a bit of a haul to the south, and you've got Desert Winds to the west, which is there's a mountain range in between. So they have a different challenge when it comes to that may not work so well for running for two things. I think the goal, the target there is at least have one event that you do and is you. You've got to establish your identity as a kingdom, and you've got to keep pushing that forward. Otherwise, why are you a kingdom if you don't have anything that identifies you and sets you apart? What you do with other people is great, but you've got to have your own house too.
Okay. Time's starting to wrap up, so I'm just going to ask for closing comments from each of you. And Quorpeck, we'll start with you. Just need to know, what's that one or two items that you want to make sure that somebody that was watching this, either physically because they're here or online, that takeaway or two?
We are all here to do Amtgard. So if you feel you have an idea or something that you'd like to try, just reach out. Talk to somebody about it. Somebody that's been in the game for a little while now. We're not going to go, hey, you're going to break it with that. No, we're just going to say, hey, I might think, or I think that this might be a better chance, but we're going to listen to what you have to do or what you have to say. Just do it. Open your mouth, step up, and do it.
Ormar?
With IntraKingdom communication and partnership, it's solidly about communication. It's not just communication, though. It's understanding who you're talking to and how to talk to them. So a lot of it is going to be about being accepting and being understanding of who each of the individuals are. Like I said previously, we don't get to pick who plays the game, but we do get to pick how we interact with them. So as long as we're remembering to keep how they prefer to interact in mind, or just accept how they interact with us in mind, that'll help you at least be better at the communication part. So once you start the communication, you can go from there. You can start the actual act of doing the thing, playing Amtgard.
Razor, closing comments?
To expand on what Quorpeck said, sharing of ideas is key. I've gotten ideas for other things, from pitches that were thrown to me, sounding boards. Be a sounding board for somebody and just throw ideas out at other people. There's no telling who's going to hear your idea and it's going to click, and they can, they've already got the tools in their toolbox to just run with it. That's the key, is sharing of information. And when it comes to that, if you got a great idea, you don't think you can pull it off, throw it to somebody else. Somebody will make it happen. And in the end, does it matter who gets the glory?
Of course it does. No. Hey, appreciate your time again. Not a doubt, whenever we've got three kingdoms represented, the opportunity to bend everybody's ear from the newest to one of the elder kingdoms, it's a great opportunity. So thank you all for taking the time to spend some of your limited time here at No More War. Enjoy the rest of it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, sir.